It has Kavanaugh assassination attempt. What lessons can we learn from it? Let's talk about it, y'all. Middle America.
And you ain't black.
The first time ever any...
What are you people? We're Americans.
We are Americans indeed. My name is Vincent. This is Middle America. We're not left wing, we're not right wing, we're just right, is what I'm supposed to say. But dear listener, when I started this channel a couple years ago, it was basically to try to find some sort of middle ground where folks could kind of meet in the middle and get away from all the insane political rhetoric that's destructive to our country and fomenting a civil war. So that was the initial intention of the channel, and for the most part, I think we've been able to accomplish that. Just last week, we had a Second Amendment panel in which we discussed guns and how that relates to the Second Amendment for obvious reasons. Tomorrow, we are going to be having a panel on What is a Woman, the Matt Walsh documentary, in which we will have our good friends in the trans community to come on and comment. I also received feedback. People said, how can you hold a discussion about women and not have any biological women present? And so because of that, we've actually added some biological women, so that's good. Okay. Having said that, dear listener, we do have to report on the situation that happened recently. Shout out to Michael Cooper. And it involves the big homie Brett Kavanaugh. Now, the Supreme Court has not given a definitive decision yet on Roe versus Wade. But by all intents and purposes, it appears that in a week or so, in the coming days, there is going to be a decision relative to Roe v. Wade based on the leaked document. The leaked document has a 5-4 majority in the conservative camp, which is basically going to repeal Roe versus Wade. Repealing Roe versus Wade does not mean that abortion is banned in America. What it means is that it is up to the states to decide their position on that matter. So that's what's going on. Now, obviously, the pro-abortion groups, NARAL and all the rest of it, are extremely upset about this, which in my mind doesn't make sense based on their rhetoric. They say that 70% of Americans agree with the practice of abortion. Well, if that's the case, then there should be no problem for the states to go and decide on it, right? Because if 70% of the country is with you and it goes up for the people to decide state by state, then the answer is obvious. Then people would be able to keep abortion in their state, since 70% of Americans believe that this is a good practice to continue in the country. So their concern about Roe v. Wade being repealed and then handed back to the states indicates to me that they're not so confident about their position being held by 70% of Americans. Okay, having said that, now Sid Nacia says against West, against wealth, against tradition, against men, against borders, and against nuclear family. These people often hide behind feminism, equality, and the environment. I don't know which people you're talking about. I don't know who that is. I don't know anybody that's against all the things that you said. But thank you for participating, Sid. Okay. Having said that, here's Cenk Uygur of the Young Turks talking about the assassination attempt on Justice Brett Kavanaugh. Let's check it out.
But what I did find was something no prayer will ever relieve. 2 children whose bodies have been pulverized by bullets fired at them, decapitated, whose flesh had been ripped apart, that the only clue as their identities was a blood-splattered cartoon clothes still clinging to them, clinging for life and finding none.
Now, I got to tell you guys, I I'm not looking into the details of the Uvalde shooting. I've made it a policy of mine to stay away from details such as that. Because as I was sharing with my brother yesterday, I'm pretty certain that all of us have traumatized ourselves by consistently having access to these horrible events of death and destruction. I'm a pretty I have a very, very hard time with the utter lack and disregard for the lives of human beings, particularly when it comes to children. So I am not looking at all those details. I'm not a gun owner. I'm not a big Second Amendment person. Like I said, we had the discussion a couple days ago. My issue with my Republican friends is, on the one hand, they say, with the exception of Elio Mike, on the one hand, they say this is a mental health issue. But then when you try to nationalize healthcare, they're against it. Well, if it's a mental health issue, and we're flooded with 400 million guns, why would we not want Medicare for all so that people like Ramos or the previous shooter can get the mental help they need? Those folks obviously were crying out for help. Ramos killed a couple cats, walked around him with his book bag. He cut his face open and he told his friends, it was fun. This is a kid that's a textbook asking for help. And for whatever reason, he wasn't able to get the kind of care and help psychologically that other people get when they're in the high 1% strata of income. Those kids, when they act up, they don't get sent to prison. They get sent to rehab, and then they get extensive outpatient therapy. People like Ramos and the Buffalo shooter and the other guys, when they have mental health issues, they just get called freaks. The cops get called on them, etc. But they don't get the long-term care they need. And at some level, we have to say that that's economic to a degree. I don't have a lot of thoughts on the Matthew McConaughey speech because I didn't watch it, and I'm probably not going to watch it. If you understand from the other channel, I'm having a very, very, very difficult time with this Uvalde shooting. So I'm doing whatever I can to protect my mental health in these situations because it's obvious to me now that I feel these things in a way that other people don't, and that's not a judgment on anybody else. A lot of it probably has to do with the fact that I've seen results of our policy probably all over the world in a way that, in a firsthand way that obviously doesn't leave you. So anyway, so he starts off the show talking about the Uvalde shooter. I don't necessarily know what the correlation is between that and the guy trying to kill Kavanaugh, but I'm sure Cenk is going to get us a view of it pretty soon here.
So that is a doctor from Uvalde. Now, this story is about Brett Kavanaugh and how somebody might have been trying to assassinate him. So why did I bring that doctor in? Well, you're going to see later in the story, and it's important to the story because it tells you how different Americans are treated. But let's find out about what happened to Kavanaugh today. A man armed with a pistol and a knife and other weapons was arrested near the Maryland home of Justice Brett Kavanaugh early Wednesday after he said that he traveled from California to kill the Supreme Court justice, federal officials said.
Now, you guys know this, that as soon as the leak happened, multiple websites gave the exact location of all the 5 justices on that opinion. Now that's known as doxing in the internet world, but technically they're not being doxed because everybody knows their actual identity. And it doesn't take much to find the address once you know a person's first and last name, et cetera, et cetera. So it's technically not doxing. But obviously, revealing the homes of these people so that people could, quote, protest in front of their homes, obviously is designed to intimidate these Supreme Court justices. I'm not really a fan of the bullshit. That's a form of psychological warfare. Now, My opinion on that is anybody that's ever been on the front lines of this issue understands that you're at literal war with folks, and you're gonna get threatened. I have seen with my own eyes. There is this one woman who was the leader of the movement locally here. She had had multiple abortions because she was a trafficked individual. Let me just put it that way. And so she would be out there, and she had twin girls. And I kid you not, as people were walking by, they would say, "I hope your girls get raped." These were the whatever. Okay? So the point is, anybody that's ever been on the front lines on this topic has experienced some sort of horrible threat. I mean, I've had my life threatened on numerous occasions. People try to assault me. I mean, one guy threatened to kill me in front of the police officer, and the cop did nothing. Okay, so my point in all this is to say it was an obvious act of psychological warfare to publish these people's homes and then invite people to protest at these people's homes, because they also know that America is flooded with guns, and it only takes one crazy person to do something crazy. And the fact of the matter is, Joe Biden is the president. So if something tragic were to befall one of those 5 Supreme Court justices, then Mr. Biden presumably would be able to elect a new one, in which case the balance would go from 5-4 conservative to 5-4 liberal in the case, et cetera, et cetera. That's the logic. And anybody that tries to pretend that that's not the goal of some people on that side of the argument either are ignorant on purpose or just don't know how those folks operate. I'm not saying every pro-choice operative operates that way. What I'm saying is, on any side of the political debate, there are always crazies, and everybody knows that. And both sides deploy their crazies and then put their hands up and say, "We had nothing to do with this." I don't know if you remember this, dear listener. I don't know if you remember this. But during the midterms recently, not this one, but the midterms, I think in 2018. I don't know if you remember the migrant caravan. I don't know if you remember that, where they were saying that there were Al-Qaeda elements, ISIS elements, all these other like nefarious groups that were supposedly tag-alongs on this migrant caravan. And Trump kept calling them invaders, invaders, invaders. You guys remember this? He kept calling them invaders. And then simultaneous to that, there was a Jewish synagogue that was trying to follow their religion, because in the Jewish scriptures, it specifically states that you must be kind to the sojourner and the foreigner, that you must treat them as if they were native born. And the Jewish scriptures carry threats in it. You know, the Old Testament God, he threatened a lot of people. And one of the threats that the Old Testament God levied against his own people, his chosen people, was, "If you mistreat the foreigner, I will leave your wives, widows, and your children orphans. Their cry will reach me, and I'm going to act on their behalf." So you had a bunch of people in this synagogue trying to follow their Bible. Package. These guys were in Pittsburgh. They were a relief package to send to the border. And one of these nuts loaded up and went there and massacred a bunch of those beautiful people. And right before he went in there, he put out a tweet, and the tweet said, "I'm not going to sit here while my country gets invaded," using literally the same language that Trump and Fox News and all the rest of those folks are using. So I said that Trump is partially responsible for that insane rhetoric, because he was telling these people over and over again that the country was being invaded. Do I believe that crazy person that went up and shot all those Jewish people up, do I believe that he was mentally stable? Of course not. He wasn't a regular citizen, and then he heard this thing from Trump, and all of a sudden he went berserk. No, this guy was already on the edge, and he was on the edge in a country flooded with weapons, and then our president and the right-wing apparatus pushed that guy over the edge. The issue that I had was that none of Trump's supporters, I'll call them Trump supporters, would ever hold the man accountable for his rhetoric. Not once. They said, well, that guy was already crazy. Duh, he was already crazy, and your president pushed him over the edge, and there's got to be responsibility for that. But did the Trump folks message me that affidavit, Amy, in Facebook, please? Did the Trump folks hold him accountable? Nope. They said there was no accountability whatsoever for Trump because the guy did it on his own. Well, to me, life isn't that simple. Yep, the guy was crazy, and we also had a guy that was speaking authority in the White House that called that play. Okay, now watch this. We continue.
That is disturbing. I'm going to give you some more disturbing and ironic details here, and then I'm going to tell you what should happen in this case, and then we're going to go back to Uvalde. So Mr. Roski told the police that he was upset about the leak of his recent Supreme Court draft decision regarding the right to abortion, as well as the recent school shootings in Uvalde, Texas. Wait a minute. You're worried about shootings and you were going to go shoot the guy. Interesting. Roski indicated that he believed that the justice that he intended to kill would side with the Second Amendment decisions that would loosen gun control laws. Okay, let me give you more details about that irony. When authorities searched his suitcase and a backpack, they found a black tactical chest rig and a tactical knife, a pistol with 2 magazines and ammunition.
I gotta tell you guys, that's not a good sign. The fact that this guy had a chest rig, that's not a what we call a bulletproof vest, what people call a bulletproof vest. But the Uvalde shooter, I believe, was rocking one of those, as well as the Buffalo shooter. The Buffalo shooter was actually engaged by a security guard in the store, but he had body armor, and so he was able to overcome that and finish the guy off. So the point is, these guys are suiting up for war. This is not like, oh, I'm gonna, go in there and just like lose my mind and just start shooting people. These dudes are shooting up for jihad. They're suiting up for jihad now. And some of them got chest rigs, generally you do that so you can carry more ammo in your sidearm. Some operators use it that way. You get extra clips for your weapons and all the rest of it. These guys are outfitted for war. They're wearing body armor, chest rigs, the whole 9 yards. Like these guys are stepping their game up, which is really, really, really concerning. But we continue.
Pepper spray, zip ties, a hammer, a screwdriver, a nail punch, a crowbar, a pistol, light, and duct tape, in addition to other items according to that affidavit. Okay. What are you doing? What kind of an argument is we should have more gun control, so I'm going to use a gun to kill somebody? That makes no sense at all. So guys, if you're on
I agree. I agree with that. That's inherently contradictory. It's just like people who kill abortionists because they're pro-life. If you're pro-life, why are you or these pro-life people who try to get legislation passed in Louisiana to give women the death penalty? We're pro-life. Now I know what the argument is going to be, because I've argued these are my people that are passing, attempting to pass these. And I said, they say, well, it demonstrates how valuable life is if we kill somebody who's taken a life. Sorry, that doesn't work for me. It just doesn't work for me, especially when you look at the record of the death penalty in America and the obvious racial disparities therein. So Cenk is right. I appreciate Cenk calling out the contradictions in his own camp. Very few people will do that. Say what you want to say about Cenk and TYT, but the fact of the matter is, this is responsible reporting on Cenk's side. We continue.
The left, you should never, ever do violence. Now that's obvious, I think, to almost everyone. I know there are people who've got issues in their lives and they don't listen to reason or logic or anyone telling them to do something that makes sense. But I'm gonna say it anyway. If you use violence, number one, it is immoral. You lose the moral high ground instantly. It is the wrong thing to do. It is a terrible thing to do. Okay, number two, if you're looking at it just from a political perspective, well, what are they gonna do? Rhetorically, Fox News and all the right wing are gonna say, oh, now we're even. Yeah, people who were inspired by us did, dozens of mass shootings, hundreds are dead, but that one lunatic went and tried to kill Kavanaugh. So, hey, it's all even. It's all.
Yeah, I think Fox News and Cenk are both wrong in this regard. Cenk, you're not saying that Ramos was inspired by Fox News. What Cenk is alluding to is the Tucker Carlson stuff with the white replacement theory stuff, which inspired the Buffalo shooter, which again, the Buffalo shooter told us exactly what radicalized him. It wasn't Fox News. He was going down a 4chan rabbit hole during the COVID lockdowns, by the way. So to try to pin the Buffalo shooting on Tucker Carlson, I think is a lowbrow move. And to try to pin, I haven't seen Fox News do it yet, but I'm certain they're going to try to pin this on CNN or MSNBC or whatever, instead of looking directly at what the person actually said. We continue.
Even, right? It's not at all even, but you help their cause when you do that. Again, it doesn't really matter because you shouldn't kill someone anyway under any and all circumstances. So it couldn't be more counterproductive. And if you talk about laws that are passed, you think they're going to pass laws against the right wing and making sure that they look into white supremacist extremists that are acquiring an arsenal?
Well, first of all, I appreciate what Cenk is doing here, because what Cenk is doing here is he is decrying violence. He's striking it down. And the fact of the matter is, I haven't seen anybody on the pro-choice side be this explicit about this issue being wrong. Right? I'm gonna be real with you. Cenk is the first one that I've seen on the quote left or the pro-choice side that's saying this is categorically wrong. It should never be done, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Cenk, but the fact of the matter is, the man, he's always good on situations like this. Always. A couple years ago, I don't know what he said about the people protesting at the houses of these folks. But when it gets violent, Cenk has always been consistent about that. Now, one thing I will say, and I don't think Cenk can tell the honest truth about this, but absolutely killing Brett Kavanaugh would absolutely have serious ramifications politically, considering we have a Democrat in office as a president. So, I mean, that is, you are going to get some significant political movement. On top of that, the psychological effects of this on the rest of the conservative members of the court should be obvious. Right now, these folks are fearing for their lives. And say what you want. How American jurisprudence is supposed to work. So there is no comparison to this. The attempt to kill a member of the Supreme Court is not the same, I'm sorry, as anything we've seen in the country. A person could argue that it's almost as significant, if not more significant, than trying to kill the president. Now, obviously, killing the president has more of a metaphorical import. But as far as practical day-to-day lives of Americans, taking out a Supreme Court justice absolutely would have ramifications. Absolutely. Now, protest outside. Now, but here's the thing. I don't feel sorry for Brett Kavanaugh or his family or anybody. As I said, if you've ever been part of like real pro-life activism, threats against your life are commonplace. They just are. As I said, I myself have witnessed the supposed pro-woman, pro-choice men walk up to my folks and tell one of the ladies that was fighting for babies, they told her, "I hope your daughters get raped." They were 12 at the time. The pro-choice, pro-women counter-protesters. Now, is that all pro-choice people? Of course not. My point is, this fight. And Brett Kavanaugh, Amy Coney, Samuel Alito, all these guys, it's obvious to me that this was a long-term plan that worked out almost to perfection. Great. I love it. Great. However, these are the ramifications of that. And you just have to be willing to deal with the ramifications of that. Now, that's how I feel personally. Obviously, on a legal perspective, I don't think, based on the job of a Supreme Court justice, that people showing up to their houses in protest is appropriate. The Supreme Court is not supposed to be informed by public opinion. That's the entire point of a Supreme Court, is you need a final court of arbitration, and public opinion should not be a factor, period. So on a political level, I don't believe it's appropriate for people to be protesting outside of a Supreme Court justice's home, especially in the current seats in Laban, the current situation we're in, where every other day people are taking up weapons and firing them all over the place. Those folks that published Kavanaugh and the rest of those people's homes, you don't think they thought to themselves, one of these crazies is going to do something? If you don't believe that, then you don't understand the people that run those organizations. We continue.
Weapons? No, the minute they start to pass laws, they're going to look into the left wing and they're going to use this guy as an excuse on the guy who did the Steve Scalise's shooting, right? Those are the two guys from the left wing that have done political or tried or thought about political shootings. The guy that shot Scalise actually did it. Meanwhile, there's dozens of cases on the other side, but no, they'll talk about this for the rest of our lives. Okay, so it's a terrible idea, even if you cared about the politics of it. But again, look, let me give you a fourth argument, even though all of this is unnecessary, because of the first argument, you shouldn't kill anyone. And the progressive position is to help people and save people, not to harm them or kill them. But the fourth argument is, if you ever have to do any kind of physical violence, that means you lost the debate. That means you're throwing your hands up going, I'm a dum-dum, I don't know how to win a debate.
Well, sometimes you lose a debate because your position is impossible to defend, Cenk. So, look, I've said over and over again, NARAL, Planned Parenthood, etc., they've never tried to get on. They don't go on Tucker Carlson and try to debate the merits of abortion. That has never been Planned Parenthood's and the pro-choice. That has never been in their strategy, and they know why. You know, most Americans believe that life starting at conception is a religious idea. They don't know that 96% of biologists say that human life begins at fertilization. They don't know that. And of those 96%, 85% of the respondents considered themselves pro-choice Democrats. So 96% of pro-choice Democratic biologists believe that life begins at conception. So right there, it's a non-starter, especially TYT. I can't tell you how many videos I've seen where Anna says that a zygote and a fetus are not human beings. I mean, seriously, how can you defend that in the public square? Nobody's going to get on TV or in any other forum and say, yes, I support the killing of human babies, especially when you start going into the minutia of the procedure. They're not going to do that. So, Cenk, give the guy a little bit of grace. You can't defend abortion either, Cenk. So give the guy a little grace. He's not a dum-dum because he can't defend abortion. I think Cenk is a pretty intelligent guy, but I don't think Cenk can defend abortion either. I mean, based on what I've seen, good night. Cenk does this Numbers 5 thing where he says the Bible supports abortion. It's unbelievable. So he only does that on his show where nobody can respond to him. If he ever tried to bring that up in an actual debate with anybody who even has a scintilla of a familiarity with the scripture, he'd get embarrassed. That's why he only does it when nobody can respond to him. And look, I've had a standing challenge in Middle America. Anybody that wants to do a moderated debate defending the virtues of abortion, let's do it. Let's set it up. But I don't have many takers because there's only been one guy that tried to do that, and I'll put the link in the comment section. You can see how well he did. So I just don't think that's a fair statement to make, Cenk, to say that the guy's a dum-dum because he can't defend abortion.
So I'm just going to shoot the other guy. That's usually what the right wing does. But under no circumstances should the left wing do that. We are right.
Why can't you say life begins when we take our first breath? The reason I don't say that, Candy, is because it's not scientific. Those are not the scientific categories for life, right? Biologists and scientists define for us the basic categories of life. So when they say life begins, is the most trustworthy way of looking at it, because otherwise people's religion or their philosophy gets all entangled into it, and then we're no longer talking in objective facts. So I just like to go with the objective science on a given topic.
In our opinions, we are right both morally and intellectually. We never ever have to resort to violence. Okay, so what does this have to do?
So again, I have to say to Cenk, however you feel about Cenk Uygur, he is spending the lion's share of this video trying to convince his audience that violence is not the way. Say what you want about Cenk, say what you want about TYT, but I don't see this happening. And by the way, forget left wing, I don't see happening with right wing media. Now, I will say one time, the most recent abortion shooter, white dude, went in and took out 2 people in the clinic, killed a police officer as well. He made it out alive, by the way. I didn't hear anybody from the pro-life side come out and say, this is horrible, we don't do this is not our team. I haven't heard that. There was one church, it was a local church I was going to, where they stood up and said, this was wrong, this is not the team that we were on, we don't do this, we absolutely decry this, and don't you dare think about it. That was one little local church with the leadership of that church that did that. But otherwise, after this dude went and killed all those people in the abortion clinic, I didn't see a lot of pro-lifers saying we don't need to do this, and you definitely didn't see Tucker Carlson or anybody else get on there and say, or Ben Shapiro, and say, we don't do this is not right, yada, yada, yada. It was, hey, that guy's crazy, it is what it is. At least Cenk is showing some responsibility here and not just saying, well, the guy is crazy, so whatever. He's making sure that his audience knows violence is not the way. Feel how you want to feel about him, but we can learn a lot from Cenk. We can learn a lot from him. Stephen De Herrera, please, for the love of God, try to be less acerbic. Try. There are different ways to communicate, Stephen. Please, for God's sake. Okay? Candy Apple is a friend of mine. Please treat her with some dignity and respect. There's no reason to go off. If you disagree with her, just tell her you disagree with her. All the extra shit is unnecessary, Stephen. Please. And don't throw a hissy and leave either. I'm not telling you to leave. I'm just saying, man, you're a smart dude. Communicate in ways that are going to be persuasive and irenic. Don't insult people's intelligence. I've known this woman for damn near over a year. And trust me, Candy's a very, very intelligent individual. Okay? Let's try to be as respectful and honor our neighbor as much as possible. We continue.
With the Uvalde shootings, well, I mean, you know some of the victims, and here, let's show you a picture. Just so you're clear, every time we talk about it, I want you to understand not just numbers and not just generic talk of kids, but these are the kids that were shot at, okay? Every time I see them, my heart breaks. So now let me show you another picture. This is the leader of the...
By the way, it's appropriate for Cenk to show the picture of these kids, okay? Because there are people that are emotionally disconnected from this issue. And I've said a bunch of times, sometimes when you're brainwashed, you need your heart to inform your brain. And there are people that are trained anytime there's a mass shooting. There are people that are trained psychologically to immediately go to defending guns, starting about guns, talking about guns, etc., because their mind has, I'm not going to say they're brainwashed, right? But your mind is predisposed. It's like a Pavlovian response. So sometimes at the cognitive level, you miss things that your heart still picks up on. So you can say it's emotional manipulation all you want, but it's important for us to see the results of the policies that all of us are supporting. And that's one of the reasons why, although I don't show the results of abortion and the ugliness of what it actually looks like, I am also not against it. As I've said a million times, if you're going to support the practice, look it dead in the face. You know, our friends over there at the progressive pro-lifers in Virginia, one of the babies that they recovered was 28 weeks old. So I've heard Cenk on his show say that abortions don't happen at that rate. I've heard him say that a million times. So Cenk, I appreciate you showing the picture of those kids, because it's going to wake up people on the right who need to be emotionally invested in this topic. But I would also challenge anybody else. If you support the act of abortion, then look it in the face then. For all of its gory. We continue.
Republicans, Mitch McConnell. Well, he says, no, we're not gonna do any gun control. I don't care about the kids that were shot. I don't care about that doctor telling me how gruesome it was. We're not gonna do any gun control. And by the way, if you try to get us to do gun control the day after or the week after or the month after, we're gonna say, you're politicizing the issue. You're politicizing the tragedy. We're not supposed to act right afterwards. No way.
Again, I agree with him. The whole you're politicizing this issue is strange to me. All I hear now, look, I don't believe that a gun grab or a gun restriction would have stopped any of these mass shooter situations. As you guys have seen in the matter of fact, Sadie, one of the participants who argued very well, in my opinion. So my point is, it's ridiculous to say you can't politicize this issue, because what people on Cenk's side are saying is, we're tired of seeing all these kids getting massacred by these guns or regular people going to the store, and they believe that a gun grab is going to solve the problem. Whether or not you agree with it, it is ridiculous to call that politicizing an issue. They're saying this would solve the problem. Now, disagree with them, that's fine, but you can't accuse them of politicizing the issue. Now, if they say, look what happened with these shootings, so that's why we need to put the Democrats in versus Republicans, fine. Okay, fine, you can call that politicization. But if they're saying, look, we have the solution, and the solution is we need to legislate XYZ, it is a ridiculous argument to say to them that they shouldn't say that. Ridiculous. That makes no sense. I've never understood that argument. All right, we continue.
No, you have to cool off and make sure you don't do anything. But wait a minute. What was his reaction to the Kavanaugh situation today? Let's find out.
Good question.
This is exactly the kind of event that many feared, that the terrible breach of the court's rules and norms could fuel. This is exactly the kind of event that many worried the unhinged, reckless, apocalyptic rhetoric from prominent figures toward the court, going back many months, and especially in recent weeks, could make more likely.
So now he's concerned. He's like, whoa, wait a minute. That's a Republican and a member of the elites. Your kids are dead, don't care, never gonna act on it. We got one more from McConnell.
The House's Democrats have refused to take it up. Now look, Mr. President, that needs to change, and it needs to change right now. Right now. House Democrats must pass this bill, and they need to do it today. No more fiddling around with this. They need to pass it today.
Okay.
Okay. So here in this situation, McConnell's like, we need to pass this today. Okay, well that's what Cenk and his crew have been saying. We need to get this done right now. Again, whether or not you agree with Cenk, that's fine. But is Mitch McConnell politicizing this issue against Kavanaugh? Of course not. Tucker Carlson's not going to say Mitch McConnell is politicizing the issue. So why is it that anytime these people say, holy shit, we got to do something about these guns, they're politicizing the issue? But then when something happens on their side, they get in front of the state and say, hey, this needs to get done right now. Come on, guys, let's be consistent. That's all I'm asking for.
You know what McConnell said later in that video? He then said, we have to act today. We must act today. Well, what happened to not politicizing a tragedy? I think possible attempt on Kavanaugh's life is an absolute tragedy. I agree with you, Mitch McConnell, on that. But why do you have to act today? Today, you tell me when there's 19 dead kids in Texas that we don't have to act today, that we don't even have to ever act. But God forbid you touch the elites. I'm going to go back to that doctor from Uvalde. I want you to see his full testimony.
But what I did find was something no prayer will ever relieve. 2 children whose bodies have been pulverized by bullets fired at them, decapitated, whose flesh had been ripped apart, that the only clue as their identities was a blood-splattered cartoon clothes still clinging to them, clinging for life and finding none.
The kids were decapitated because the guy used an AR-15. Mitch McConnell says, no, we will not ban AR-15s. We will not move the age limit of AR-15s. We will not put a weight limit on waiting period for AR-15s. We will not do federal back.
Now, again, do I believe that this will stop mass shootings? I don't. Do I believe that there are legitimate uses for the AR-15? Now, I'm a Christian pacifist. I don't believe that it's appropriate for a Christian to use lethal force on anybody for any reason, including self-defense or even the defense of others. That's what I believe doctrinally as a Christian. Now, if you're going to ask me, how do I survive in practice with that? I'm not very good at it, to be honest with you. In my past, not so much, but I'm working on it. But Cenk, I have to say, there are legitimate uses for AR-15 ownership, particularly for women. A lot of people don't realize this, but the AR-15 is a favorite weapon system of women because of its lightweight, its the capabilities that it has, and the fact that the kick isn't as bad, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of reasons that women prefer the AR-15, and it gives them a fighting chance. As we've demonstrated on this channel, most home invasions are two-man operations. And so you've got one person against 2 people. And so a semi-automatic AR-15 definitely equalizes the playing field. And anybody that doesn't acknowledge that, I'm sorry. Again, Cenk is a millionaire who lives probably in a gated community in Los Angeles somewhere. Okay, so the chances of a home invader coming into his house are nil. So Cenk can say all that stuff about the AR-15. But if there's some lady in Texas that's living in a questionable neighborhood, that's why you're never going to get an AR-15 gun grab passed, because it's just not going to happen. But my point is, so I disagree with Cenk on that, but it's still valid that he brings that up in this conversation, is my point.
Checks, which are 88% popular in this country, overwhelming majority of Republican voters want them. I will not do any of those. I will not do red flag laws to catch people who have mental health issues, who are armed and dangerous. I don't care about your decapitated kids. But
now, red flag laws, as Elio Mike told us, could actually work and be helpful. Side of gun violence. I didn't know exactly. There was a lot of legalese because the guy was a law enforcement official, but he basically said something to the effect of it could function like a search warrant. Like if somebody's like seriously a red flag guy, it could function like a search warrant. And there's some triangulation between law enforcement and the psychotherapist or something like that. Go back and watch it. But my point is, I don't think a gun grab would work, but absolutely more aggressive red flag laws absolutely could aid in getting us to be more and more and more of a culture that respects life. Say it that way. So the red flag laws, I believe, are absolutely valid, and something that I got to tell you, I'm not sure why the way that Elio Mike explained it, and you guys can watch it later. Maybe I'll take that clip out because Sadie and Mike were going back and forth, and it was really, really good. I don't know why that's not passed. I feel like the red flag laws would get support by Republicans and Democrats. I think even if you're an ardent gun person, if the red flag laws get explained the way Elliot, I'm gonna find that and clip it and just have it as a standalone video, because I do think that was one of the things I got from the discussion. Is that and no, okay, so here's Mike right here. This is Elio Mike. No red flags based on anonymous tips, but only on sworn statements in a judicial setting. Okay. So that's a good balance, right? That's a good balance. And obviously, this guy Ramos, for example, he was called a school shooter by the kids. So maybe you don't need to jam up the kids and make them do a sworn statement, but the teachers definitely, I think, could do a sworn statement. There was another mass shooter that he was in his backyard letting off shots in his underwear. It happened a couple years ago. And he was another kid that all the kids said was a school shooter. As a matter of fact, a couple of the kids reported this guy to the FBI. The FBI visited his house and they left. In a red flag context, they would have been able to do a lot more. So to Candy's point, most of us want / support more stringent red flag laws, like Elio Mike said, but for some reason, that's not getting passed, and I'm not particularly certain why that is. We continue.
Oh my God, it's one of the elites. It's my Republican friend. We have to act today, Mitch McConnell says. We should act on Kavanaugh, but we should also act to protect our own children. Now, you see, this is how the elites work. This is how Republicans think. If it's a friend of mine, then I care a lot. If it's your kids, I don't care at all. That's what Mitch McConnell just told you.
Well, I'm not sure that that's what Mitch McConnell just said, but I don't see how you could come to a different conclusion. Mitch McConnell is a member of our government, and if there's an assassination attempt that boldly or that explicit, then he's got to think to himself, well, what about me? So Mitch McConnell has serious self-interest here in passing a law like this very quickly. And it appears that he doesn't feel the likelihood of him dying in a mass shooter event is feasible. And so he can drag his feet on that, and so can the rest of the other folks. I wish Cenk wouldn't say the Republicans. I wish he would just leave it at the people in control. I know a lot of Republicans, they're not evil, horrible people like Cenk is trying to make them out to be. I don't look at that as a winning strategy at all. I don't believe that demonizing Republicans, demonizing AR owners and all the rest of it is the solution, because in a democracy, those people get to vote. And if you've been telling them that they're crazy, they're nuts, they're immoral, they're horrible, they're everything wrong with America, well, when it's time to vote, they're going to vote against you, even if it means against their self-interest. So I think we should be careful about that. So look, Brett Kavanaugh definitely had a credible threat against his life. He didn't die. His kids didn't die. Like I said, being on the front lines of being pro-life, you get threatened all the time. Your life gets threatened. Your kids get threatened. You hear the worst stuff. As I said, the supposedly pro-choice, pro-woman pro-choicers told my friend that she hoped that her 12-year-old daughters got raped, and the girls were literally right there. So my point is, when you're on the front line of this, you know what you're getting into. And so, he's got to take care of his family, but I don't really feel, I don't feel sorry for this. It's not an outrage. This is par for the course. I mean, it is what it is. This is a very, very serious issue. And if I told the crew one time, I said, look, if you're really, really going to be about this, you need to be willing to pay any and every price necessary up to it, including your life. It is what it is. And obviously, I said, we're not going to respond in kind in any form of violence. So that's my perspective on it. If you're going to put yourself in the middle of the arena, then folks are going to get at you. But as far as so that's how I personally feel about it. Obviously, on a national level, we cannot have Supreme Court justices being psychologically attacked, right? Whether or not this guy pulled the trigger, it absolutely is an effective means of psychological warfare, because these justices were Supreme Court justices have always been kind of like the exception to the rule as far as politics goes. They were kind of like gods on Mount Olympus to a degree. But this whole situation has changed that fundamentally in America, and I think that is very, very, very concerning. I think that's extremely concerning, because that's an unraveling of an institution that prior to this entire situation generally had been above the fray, and generally everybody kind of looked at as sacred. So that's where I'm at with it. I think it's horrible. I think it's terrible that happened at a national level. But they knew what they were getting into when they manipulated their way into the Supreme Court, because obviously that's what they did. So I'm not, look, that was brilliant the way you guys got on there and all the rest of it, but you can't complain now that there's some fallout. Okay, so that's how I feel about it. Usually I say love your neighbor, take care of each other. I'm going to say all that at the outro, but again, guys, especially if you're in America, man, all I can tell you is don't be paranoid, but don't dilly-dally. If you're going to Walmart, fucking go in, get what you need, and get out. Keep your head on a swivel, and just get home and be safe as you possibly can. That's the best I could do for everybody, because that's where we're at right now in the United States of America, unfortunately. So having said that, dear listener, meantime, love your neighbor, take care of each other. Middle America, we are the media. Till next time, guys.